If you've been listening to the Eat More Carbs podcast recently, you know Reilly and I are both in the middle of marathon training. This week, we wanted to highlight some of the things that we are doing to make sure we're ready for race day. We're also making sure that we're properly fueled for our runs, which includes carbohydrates and 2Before.
2Before is an all-natural pre-workout designed to enhance athletic performance through the benefits of New Zealand blackcurrant berries. Studies have shown these berries to increase vasodilation and prime the body to kickstart muscle recovery. These antioxidant-rich berries have a sweet and tangy flavor and will level up your performance and recovery. Use code Reilly for 20% off 20 packs and multi-serve packs online at 2before.com.
This is the Eat More Carbs podcast. Hello and welcome to the Eat More Carbs podcast. My name is Jenna Fisher and I'm here with my co-host Reilly Beatty. Today we're going to be talking about added sugar.
Before we jump into today's episode, if you want to hang out with Jenna and myself even more, you can apply for our one-on-one sports nutrition coaching programs.
Before we get into our questions about added sugar, Reilly, what's your high and low?
So start off with my low. We have a neighborhood pool that is now open because it being summertime. And we're really excited about the pool, especially with Charlie. We're pumped to take her to the pool. But we have not made it to the pool because people keep pooping in the pool.
No.
There's been a lot of stuff going on because we've had 3 incidences that have closed the pool over the weekend. They found out that it was human poop and it has been adults. Yes.
No.
I know. No. I know everybody was not ready for this low today, but that is what's been happening.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I have like so many questions that are so inappropriate. But as someone who is a swimmer and a lifeguard growing up, like poop in a pool nope, I would say far away. I don't care how many times they shock it and pour chemicals in there or whatever the lifeguard does. No.
And it was funny because everybody was on our Facebook page complaining about all the kids and all the parents who were irresponsible because their kids, had pooped in the pool. And then we got a notification from our HOA that it has been adults.
So the question I have to ask, is it purposeful? Do you know the details? Has it been like an act of vandalism?
One time it was supposedly vandalism.
Okay.
And then the second and the third time, not sure. I don't think it was vandalism. We also don't have lifeguards at the pool.
Oh.
So they have to close the pool for an extended period of time since it has been sitting there.
Oh my gosh. Do they have like video cameras? Like, is that how they know that it was an adult? Do you know?
Or people report it, I guess. They found the vandalism was supposedly on camera, but they sent it in. Like they sent it in for like fecal examination.
Oh my gosh.
And that's how they found it was like adult human.
Oh my gosh, yeah, because I guess they would have to kind of like, if it happened after hours or something like that, they'd have to rule out like, was this an animal?
It's like a fenced pool. Like,
oh, okay. Yeah.
If there's any animal getting in, it was something that could climb, which I don't think things climb. Like we have foxes in the neighborhood, we have alligators, like they're not climbing. A deer's not climbing. It was a human. They tested it and it was human.
Wow. Well, keep us posted for sure. Poolgate situation, because I'm very interested. But between that and the coffin washing up, your neighborhood, what is going on?
I know. I almost didn't share this because I was like, this with the coffin, like what is happening in South Carolina?
Oh my gosh.
Has nothing related to Poolgate. It is just a little bit of a funny story because Robbie and I were going out to dinner the other night. He's wearing black. I come downstairs and I'm wearing black. And he is surprised that I'm wearing black because he's wearing black. And I was like, sir, are you new here? I only wear black. So we both went to dinner wearing all black.
That's okay. Sometimes it just happens. Like I picked out my marathon outfit and then my husband picked out his and it just so happened that we picked the same shirt.
You looked great though. You both looked great. What about you? What's your high and your low?
I have kind of a low to high story. Leading up to our marathon, I really didn't know what I was going to do as far as carrying a phone with me. I don't usually carry a phone, but I was a little bit nervous that running a marathon, running 26 miles, I might want it with me. So I wanted to buy a sports bra that had a pocket for a cell phone. Most of them are sold out right now. And there's one company, the company is Bandit, and they sell a sports bra that has a phone pocket that goes like razorback style in between your shoulder blades, which is pretty much the only place I wanted to carry a phone. I know that there are some that carry it on the front or on the sides, but I was worried about like how that might feel. They released a new line of clothing about 2 weeks before the marathon, and I was so excited because I was like, I'm gonna get one of these bras, and they had one left, and I was so excited. So I bought it in my size, and then shortly after I confirmed purchase, I get this email from them that's like, because because we've had such a large volume of people purchasing this, it's going to take a while for this to get to you. A couple days before the race, I was like, it's just not coming. I just have to accept the fact that I'm not going to wear the bra. It's not going to happen. I just have to get over that. Just being me, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to email them and just see if maybe they have an updated shipping date. So that way I know whether or not I need to be looking for another race bra or something like that, because I wanted to run in it at least once. And I emailed them and I was like, hey, do you have an updated date? And immediately I got a personalized email back from an actual person, not from a generic email response or something like that. That was like, we're so excited for your race. We're going to mail it out to you today. Cheers, kind of a thing. And I got the bra several days before the race. I got to test it out before I ran in it. And it was great. And even though I didn't end up bringing my phone, which I know is the point of me buying it in the first place, it was a great bra. So I have nothing but good things to say about the company. And that's how my low turned into a high.
I love that.
Today we're talking about added sugar. Reilly, I know you've had a lot of questions about added sugar, but first I'd kind of like to start out with what does added sugar mean? What does that mean when we see that on a food label? What does that mean when we see that advertised? Where are we at?
So you know that we love the why at RBSN. So we have to start off with the definition, right? And when we look at added sugar, it's basically any type of sugar that has been added to a product during processing. Pretty simple.
And that can be any type of sugar to help with sweetness, flavor enhancement, preservation, anything like that. That is added sugar. Because it's added to the product that's not naturally there. If we have a product that we want to add sweetness to, we can add sugar, but it needs to be identified on the label as added sugar.
So what you're saying, and just to clear this up, sugar is added to a product. So any product that has added sugar in it has been processed.
I think that's a fair thing to say.
What are some examples of added sugar, right? When we talk about added sugar and we look at it on the label, are there different names that added sugar falls under?
Yep, absolutely. So it could be table sugar, high fructose corn syrup, honey, maple syrup, agave nectar. Any one of those things counts towards added sugar.
So it sounds like some of those have maybe some health halos around them. Some of them have also been a little demonized.
I love what you said about health halos, because right now there is such a surge in being refined sugar free. So can you tell us what's the difference between a refined sugar and a not refined sugar? What are the examples there?
So jumping into the definitions again, because again, there's so much terminology and there's so much, I guess, conversation around these topics, but nobody is clearly defining these words. So refined sugar is going to be any sugar that has been processed and purified to remove any impurities or color, right? So I often think about the white table sugar that you see, right? That's going to be refined. Refined sugar and non-refined sugar, so our sugars that have not been as processed, can still be added sugars. And I think that is a huge misconception.
Yes, refined sugar and non-refined sugars. So those things like honey, agave, maybe even date sugar, depending on what we're using, those can all be added sugars in a product. What are your thoughts as a dietitian on added sugar?
So added sugar has definitely got a bad reputation, but I think we have to go back to the why when we're thinking about this, just like everything in nutrition. When we look at the general population of people, we're probably consuming too much sugar, just being completely honest, because we have 6 essential nutrients. We need to get them all in our diet, and most people are consuming too much sugar. A processing technique that's going to add further sugar to a product is going to be not always the best for the general population. That being said, though, added sugar is just energy. We're adding energy to a product, and for individuals like busy athletes or people who are under fueling, not eating enough, added sugars or added energy is actually a really easy way to help meet energy needs and allow for proper energy availability. So I think it goes back to the why and the individualization, because a lot of the time in sports, we want products with added sugar because it's an easy way to get in more energy. If you're somebody who's already consuming enough energy, you might not want to have an added sugar product, or an added energy product is another way that we can say it.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because I do think that there is such a misconception that when you as a sports dietitian say we should be consuming something like a Gatorade that has added sugar or another product that has added sugar, it's immediately thought of as, what are you recommending as a dietitian? And it's because sports athletes and things like that do need those quick access to energy in order to perform well. But the general population, that's not who the intended audience is, which is why it's nice that for the general population, we do have that breakdown on the food label to let them know know that there is added sugar in a product, but it's also good as an athlete because then you also know that that product is going to provide more energy and it might be a good one for you.
And that's why I think social media has a huge role in this, because what happens is we'll see something on social media and we think it immediately applies to us. Not all nutrition advice is the same. It is very, very individualized. And even if you are an athlete, you should not be drinking Gatorade as your main fluid option throughout the entire day, but utilizing it as a sports drink, utilizing it around training. In our marathon episode, you talk about how you needed Gatorade after you ran your marathon because you needed some carbohydrates. You weren't really able to, consume a lot of fuel. Having something that had energy in the liquid is a great way to, meet those energy needs.
So what I'm hearing you say a lot of is that there are certain products out there that can be really beneficial at certain points or certain times, but it sounds like along with those same products, it's not necessarily something that we should be doing all the time. Kind of like we can have too much of anything.
Right. And I think too, like going back to the social media thing, but we just see blanket recommendations, right? We see you can only have 25 grams of added sugar per day. First of all, that's really hard to do if you've ever tried to do that. Very restrictive. That recommendation is going to be very different for an active person versus somebody who's not as active.
And that goes back to the idea of like individualization with nutrition and why certain products are intended for certain populations and maybe not encouraged for others.
Exactly. And I think what's happened is it's really easy for people to say things are good and things are bad. And what's happened with our society is we have said that added sugars are bad. We've put them on the food label, and the goal is to look for a product that contains minimal added sugars. When we compare that to a nutrient like protein, where we're trying to find products that contain the most protein possible. And it's all about basically how we've approached this topic.
As a dietitian, when are you recommending athletes or clients even consume things with added sugar in them? I know we just kind of talked a little bit about Gatorade and using that maybe like pre and post, but what about the other times that we should maybe be searching for something that does provide a little bit more energy?
Like you said, pre and post, huge times. Highly recommend added sugars around those times because we're really focused on quick digesting energy. Another time to focus on like added sugars is when we have lower energy availability or we have energy inavailability. So somebody who is under fueling is not able to get enough fuel in. Added sugars are in a lot of convenience products, and that's an easy and quick way to get more energy. So I love those products for those periods of time. Another thing too is like sometimes we want to enjoy ourselves, and products that contain added sugars are, in those products as well. I don't know if I would necessarily say, go look for those products, but it's nothing to be scared of.
I'm really glad you brought that up because one of the things that we talk about a lot of is that fueling should not only incorporate foods that help with performance, but also help with things like the lifestyle side of things. Those fueling focuses are different, but we don't necessarily need to like cut out or remove added sugars, even from the times that aren't like pre and post or some of those other times that you mentioned. We can still safely consume them and enjoy them every now and then, and that's okay.
Definitely. I was working with a new client who's just started at RBSN who was really scared of added sugars, and it was definitely taking a toll on her mental health. She was under fueling because she was so worried about consuming foods with added sugar. She's a busy athlete and she was relying a lot on convenience foods, but then was scared to eat them because they had added sugar, and it was resulting in a loss of a period, not feeling great during her workouts, headaches, lack of energy. This was actually likely more detrimental to her health than actually just consuming added sugars. So I think sometimes with nutrition, we're only focused on like a certain nutrient and the harm of that nutrient, but we're not looking at the big picture.
We tend to fixate and even sometimes hyperfixate on one ingredient or one component of a food, but we're just kind of taking the big picture and just pinpointing one specific spot. And like we have to look at the overarching, what's going on here? Let's look at the bigger picture. Let's zoom out. How is this really going to impact me overall? And is this slight amount of added sugar really going to be that impactful on like not just today, but long term too?
Exactly. And that kind of goes back to making things like labeled as good or as bad, right? We said protein, good, sodium, bad, sugar, bad, carbs, bad, fiber, good. Too much of any of these ingredients is going to be a bad thing. Not enough of these ingredients is also going to be a bad thing.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance, not only for performance, but also like life longevity and like overall. As a dietitian, are there instances in which you recommend avoiding added sugar?
I wouldn't necessarily say like I recommend avoiding added sugar, but I think it goes back to making sure that we just have a balanced fueling plan, right? Like at RBSN, we both use a performance plate to help our athletes because because it incorporates all 6 essential nutrients. One of those essential nutrients is carbohydrates. Sugar is a carbohydrate. So we really love the performance plates because it really focuses on incorporating all of the essential nutrients in all of the food groups. So if you're an athlete and you're not following the performance plate method, then we might have to reduce a certain area of your fueling so we can work on optimizing you as an athlete and incorporating other nutrients. So this is a time, right? If most of your diet is carbohydrates or if most of your diet is protein, then we're going to have to modify it and adjust it.
I think a lot of times when people hear the word added sugar, they just picture somebody picking up a tablespoon of sugar, like baking sugar, and sprinkling it over the top of all of the foods that we're consuming in a meal. But that's not really what added sugar is. So can you kind of like navigate that and how that might be brought up with like if a client or athlete is concerned about that's what you mean when you say added sugar, like how do you help them navigate that conversation?
The amount of videos I have seen on the internet of people scooping sugar into a container or scooping it next to a piece of food, showing how much added sugar and table sugar is added to a certain product makes me cringe. And that is all I can think about based off of your question.
Why does it make you cringe?
I just think we're so focused as a society on like the negative aspects of food.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this in your marathon episode, but you're going for 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour. Why are we not focusing on the beneficial part of energy? Like, why are we not focused on like the beneficial part of that? Like, you know, you watch those videos of, oh my gosh, sugar is such a bad thing. And it's like, if I could get my like Ironwoman athletes to consume that much sugar during their race, they would be unstoppable. But we're so focused on the negative side effect of it. There's lots of different things that go into somebody's health, but we just focus on the negative things and again go back to like making things good or bad when there's just so much more that goes into nutrition than demonizing a single nutrient.
I think it also plays into the who is this for? Because for some people, we might want to be really cautious of how much sugar that we're taking in a day from the standpoint of how does it potentially impact what I am doing in a day. But then there are also people that how does this positively impact what I'm doing in a day? And those two people might be very different people, and that's okay. But we can't just put a video out there and demonize a certain food group and make everyone feel like it's not right for them, because for some people it might be, and for other people it might not. And that's why nutrition is so individualized. It's like learning about what is right for you, what are your goals, and how can we find the right things to help you fuel to reach your goals and make sure that it isn't doing anything harmful.
And harm can be done in so many different ways. We always, especially with the sugar conversation, we focus on the physical health, which yes, too much of anything is going to be a bad thing, but there's also mental and emotional health, and being scared of sugar is just as detrimental to health as eating too much of it.
I know that there are so many different types of sugar, so many different types of sweeteners, and if you're interested in those types of things, if you have questions about those things, Reilly and I are more than happy to do another totally separate podcast answering questions about that. And if you do have questions, you can always leave them below, or you can find us on Instagram. We're at the Eat More Carbs podcast. If you have questions for Reilly and I, you can find us on Instagram. You can find Reilly at reilly.beatty.nutrition, and you can find me at jenna.fisher.nutrition. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Eat More Carbs podcast. Please make sure you rate, subscribe, and review. And as always, remember to eat more carbs.